Red light. These lights aren't on for some reason. A little dark up here. My epileptic seizure stuff was just going back and forth there. Oh, boy.
I thought we had found them all.
Easy, big fella.
Let me know that he may or may not be there.
He's gonna be late.
Go back to Michigan or where
Yeah,
we
he said he felt like we'd be a half hour late.
You're not going back after the meeting?
I appreciate your optimism.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Congressional report ready, just in case he does not. Good.
In conclusion,
It was crazy. We had one crazy night of weather the same day you all got.
Oh, that
hammered.
storm.
That was like going wet. And just get out a lot,
Yeah.
hang out, walk up, come back down. Get some food. It's just like this. Next day, do it again.
Good luck. The kids go.
No. They don't need to.
good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Thursday, August 3rd edition of the Lexington City Council meeting. Thank you all for braving the raindrops and joining us this evening, and look forward to a very productive meeting. Like to, before I call the meeting to order, if there's anyone who does plan to speak to council this evening and wants to sign up, we do have a roster over here for those that want to address council. And with that, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask you all to please stand and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. I did want to acknowledge Mr. Betts was out of town attending a funeral and was flying back and is en route and will likely be about 30 minutes late, he anticipates, depending upon traffic on I-81, which is always a wild card. So, but he does intend to join us this evening a little bit late. But also would like to add a closed session for council. At the end of our meeting, I do not anticipate there'll be any action taken after our closed session. But one is to review a personnel matter with the city manager, and the other is seeking or a matter that requires legal advice from our attorney, an issue that he wants to bring before council. And with that change, those changes, that addition, if there's no objection or anything else council would like to see on the agenda. If no objections, we will approve the agenda with that modification. Do not have any proclamations for your listening pleasure this evening, and but we do have a presentation from our friend and director Fred Dudley of the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Fred, welcome, and glad you're here. No stranger to this room or this crowd.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And I appreciate the opportunity to present the council. I think it was February of last year that I was here last. And when I was asked this time to make an appearance and give council an update on some of the things happening at the landfill, I thought, oh, wow, there's not, it's a landfill. There's nothing exciting that goes on there. And I like to keep it that way. However, I did manage to put together a list of things that may be of interest to you folks. And at any time, if somebody has a question or something, please interrupt. And also I had Jim had emailed me. I just told him a while ago, he had emailed me and said, try to keep it under 10 minutes. And I thought, well, wow, that's not going to be a problem. So just as a general operations update, in August of 2022, we began the filling of our new lined landfill cell 2 with household waste. All commercial and construction demolition debris continued to be placed in cell 1. This was done in order to create an adequate fluff layer in cell 2 to protect our liner system, which is very important. On December 1st of last year, we began sending all waste to cell 2. The waste tonnage received during fiscal year 2023 increased by nearly 1,500 tons over fiscal year 2022. During fiscal year 2023, we received the following tonnage originating from each locality. The county of Rockbridge at 33,964 tons. City of Lexington is 6,789 tons. City of Buena Vista, 5,902 tons. And non-jurisdictional tonnage was right at 99 tons. As far as our operation goes, we have, a lot of challenges day to day, month to month, year to year. One of our biggest operational challenges is leachate, or more specifically, the level of leachate in our storage basin. I'm happy to report that our staff member who hauls the leachate has done an awesome job of maintaining a comfortable level in our basin. He has the responsibility of monitoring the weather forecast and increasing the number of loads hauled per day based on anticipated future rainfall amounts. And of course, during drier times, fewer loads are hauled per day. If the basin level gets low, we may only haul 2 or 3 loads during a 5-day period. Unfortunately, our driver is currently off for medical reasons and isn't expected to return to full duty until likely the end of this month. And since I'm the only other Class A CDL license holder, by default, I get the job. So I've been attempting to fill that void. During the previous winter months, our leachate production increased drastically. For instance, in December of 2022, we hauled 777,506 gallons. Leachate production remained relatively high until April of this year, when it began to trend downward due to the decreased rainfall. Sorry. In June of this year, only 77,945 gallons were produced, as there was very little precipitation. The current FY24 treatment cost is $23.86 per 1,000 gallons. And I thought I'd add in some office updates, some things office related. I guess one of the biggest highlights, I guess you'd say, is our previous administrative assistant resigned in February. She had a better opportunity elsewhere. And I had actually asked one of our equipment operators, Mr. James Black, who previously worked in an office environment during his enlistment with the U.S. Army, if he'd be willing to assist on days when landfill activities were slow. And he gladly accepted and worked in the office 2 and 3 days a week. After the job was posted officially, Mr. Black decided to apply for it. And he was chosen as our new administrative assistant and began serving in his new role on April 17th. As part of the office update, just a little blurb on the financials. At the end of FY23, our revenues exceeded the budgeted amount by $305,079. For our expenditures, we ended the fiscal year with a surplus of $466,333. Of course, it should be noted that the figures are preliminary and may be adjusted by our auditors over the next couple of months. At the start of our current fiscal year, tipping fees in all waste categories were increased $1 per ton, our tire disposal fees increased by 50 cents per tire in all per tire categories. During the current fiscal year, we plan to purchase a new track loader, which is used to push waste from the tipping area onto the current lift. The typical lifespan for this machine in a landfill environment is about 5 years. A landfill environment is extremely rough. And add in the soil type that we have is clay with a lot of sand content. So it's very abrasive on our track system on all of our track machines. We also plan to purchase a new slope mower. Our current machine was purchased in 2013, so we've got quite a bit of life out of it. And we will be replacing our computer server. The authority also plans to set aside $355,000 this fiscal year for final closure and post-closure requirements. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Or
Thank you, Fred. Leslie.
On the leachate, is it ever tested or periodically tested by either y'all or by the MSA?
we have a requirement that, well, I guess the MSA does testing on it fairly frequently, I think. But we have to, we are now required to test annually. We're required by DEQ, so yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Alligood.
A while back, Ms. Strong, there was a question about the leachate harming, the leachate from the landfill harming the germs at the MSA plant, and there was a question about that. And do you remember what the resolution was for that?
Well, typically, I guess with the wastewater treatment plant, the biology, or I guess the bugs,
Right.
or the biology,
Generally the bugs. Right?
yeah, that's the most important part. In other words, I mentioned hauling, for a pond gets level, if a pond level gets low, we haul 2, maybe 3 loads a week. And even though that might not be necessary for us, it is for the wastewater treatment plant. Their bacteria has to be, they have to continue to be acclimated. If we stop, they get accustomed to not getting leachate, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is, and it's a shock to them, and bad things happen when that occurs. So, and of course, also, if we're only taking 1 to 2 loads or 3 loads a week, and all of a sudden we get a lot of rainfall over a couple of days' time, and the pond level comes way up, instead of jumping in and hauling 4, 5, 6 loads a day, we have to start off slow, 2 loads the first day, 2, maybe 3 the next, and so on and so forth, and build it back up so that we don't disturb the biology at the wastewater treatment plant. And
I remember it being a problem. It kind of resolved itself when the rainfall got more normal in there. I think it was during an extremely dry phase was happening in there, but the leachate comes when it rains, and they've got to do something with it there. There was another thing from several years ago. This is how my mind works there. You all were crushing glass and at the landfill, and the glass was making tires go flat. That ended up crushing glass, and you stopped doing it. Like the glass wasn't sufficiently crushed, and it was causing those very expensive tires to get punctures. Now that we've got this recycling thing going for glass, are we using any of that recycled glass that's now almost sand quality at the landfill to to do fill instead of what, dirt or something?
I think that's something that has to be purchased. We don't get that. I have no objection to receiving it, but we don't get it. And I think, and that was quite a few years ago, we had gotten an enormous amount of crushed glass from the recycling place in Roanoke. And some kind of arrangement the previous director had made, and it was hoped that we could use it for as a daily cover, but we found out that that was not a practical use. It would, it was more costly to use the glass as opposed, because we'd have to mix soil with it. And the process was time consuming.
Well, and I remember about the flat tires.
Right. So once we, then I guess I came up with the idea because it was crushed fairly small. I came up with the idea, hey, why can't we use it as an aggregate on our haul roads? And I spoke with CNS Disposal and pitched the idea, and he was like, I don't like that. And he said, well, I'm willing to give it a try. Can you just do it on a very small area? So that's what we did. And he run his trucks through there for a few weeks, and he had no flat tires. He said there was no issue. We could go ahead and put it on the entire hillside. So that's what we did. And and we had no issues whatsoever, and except for one person. One person allegedly had 2 flat tires on a trailer and was pretty upset and said it was glass that punctured. So we had to stop using it for that purpose at that point.
I was just curious about what had happened in the past about that. Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler.
Well, thanks for being here tonight. The tonnage that you talked about, the increase from last year to the just concluded fiscal year, is that in line with projections? I mean, we obviously want the landfill to last for decades and decades. I mean, is that what we're projecting, and are we concerned at all by the increase? Or
It fluctuates greatly from year to year. During COVID, in the first year of COVID, I think commercial waste and primarily commercial waste dropped off considerably, and where residential waste increased. And I guess construction demolition debris kind of sort of stayed close to the same, because homeowners were stuck at home and were doing odd jobs and remodeling and different things. So to answer your question, no, it's not a concern, because it does fluctuate greatly from one year to the next, depending on the economy, depending upon, all depending on the economy, what kind of construction projects are going on, what Washington Lee and BMI are doing, so on and so forth. So thank you.
Very good. Fred, we greatly appreciate you being with us this evening. There's so many different organizations that the city is involved with, and keeping that connectivity to understand the operations, multi-million-dollar operation that's taking place, and quietly taking care of the trash and waste in our community. So thank you for your incredible board, and as well for your great staff that keeps things humming along out there. And greatly appreciate you being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I apologize for this being brief. It would have been a little longer, but serving as a director and truck driver, it consumes most of my time and energy. So
Absolutely.
thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Thank you, Fred. Next item on the agenda, public hearings. The first 6.1 public hearing and consideration of a request from Maxmark Homes LLC. I'll call on the city planner to introduce this. Arnie, welcome.
Good evening to you all. And if you could entertain maybe opening both 6.1 and 6.2, they're really both together. It's the same issues in both of them. And we can hold the staff report and the public comment and maybe part of the discussion, but as long as you vote on them separately, we could handle them together if you like.
Any objection to doing that? Carry on.
This request before you really deals with three particular items. And on page one of your staff report for the PUD, as an example, you will see lot number 21 is marked with an X. This has been decided to be a lot that is no longer buildable. It currently does not have anything on it except for a retaining wall. And the proposal is to take the land area from lot 21 that is being vacated and provide that or sell that to the owners of lots 22 and 20. And then shift the open space, the little open space wedge that you see at the back, just shift that over a little bit. So the open space overall for the property or for the development would not change. And we try to show that, not the open space portion, but what lot 20, 21, and 22 look like from the street. So you'll see that on the photograph on page 2. And again, lot 21 is the lot in the middle there and no structures on it, but there is a retaining wall. So the purpose of this is to divide that or vacate that lot and divide part of it over and give it to lot 22 and the other part over to lot 20. The reason that this is a 2-part proposal is that the planned unit development has a condition that says the subdivision would follow an approved development concept plan. So if we change the development concept plan, then we also have to change the PUD approval. But again, it's really the same issue in both of them, which are the three things that I just read in. Planning Commission did recommend approval for both of these items unanimously, 6-0. And we do have the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting on July 13th, 2023 in your packet. And you'll notice they also handled those two items together. So that truly is the basis of the request. Again, it's to take lot 21 because it's not buildable, take that land area, give part of it to lot 22 and part of it to lot 20. The open space wedge that's in the rear just shifts over a little bit. So this open space total area does not increase and does not decrease. Happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions?
Just one. Have you gotten any comments or from anybody on this issue?
No, and one thing I didn't remember to include is that we do have a letter from the property owner of lot 20 in favor, and also from the homeowners association in particular. But nobody else has responded or even had questions about the proposal, even since the planning commission.
Great, thank you.
Arnie, do you understand that those pieces will be sold to them or that's being given, or has that been worked
I
out?
only presume that it's land and therefore it would be sold, but I don't know the answer to that for certain.
Gotcha. We'll let the attorneys figure that out.
Correct.
Very good. Very good. No other questions for Arnie. I'd like to open the public hearing for 6.1 and 6.2. Consideration of requests from Max Marks Homes LLC and Weatherburn to amend the Weatherburn subdivision PUD and vacate lot 21 and adjust the boundaries of lots 20 and 22 in the Weatherburn subdivision. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this issue this evening? Hearing none at 7:22, I'd like to close the public hearings for 6.1 and 6.2. And as the planner suggested that we take these up independently, so I'd ask for council's consideration on the item of 6.1.
I move to approve an amendment to the Weatherburn Planned Unit Development Application PUD 2023-01 as presented by the applicant with the one applicant proffered condition.
Have a motion second, any discussion? I'll just observe, thank you for having the property owner bring this forward and get it cleaned up. There you are. And getting this in good condition for the future. Glad that it's being tended to. Roll call vote, Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
And Mr. Betts is absent and motion carries unanimously 5-0. And again, 6.2, it asks for council's consideration.
I was trying to find the actual proposed motion, but I'll I will move to Approve the request from Pearson Hotchkiss to vacate lot 21 and adjust the boundary lines of lot 20 and 22 in the Weatherburn subdivision, as well as adjust the adjacent open space in accordance with the planned unit development amendment requested.
Second.
Have a motion, and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you all very much. Good work. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, consideration of request from Washington Lee University for site plan approval. And I'll call on the city planner to introduce this.
Good evening again. This
Before
is-
you,
Oh,
you
yeah,
do,
sure.
do you want to read something or do we need to read something?
No, you just need to announce that you have the conflict and that you're going to, because of the personal interest in the transaction, which involves Washington and Lee and the property. And that you need to recuse yourself from consideration and step down from the dais. You can just
Thank you.
agree with that.
I agree with that. My husband works for Washington and Lee, so I have a conflict with this issue.
Personal interest in the transaction.
Personal
Yep,
interest.
yes, ma'am.
Same.
And my spouse works at WNL also.
Thank you all. And then there were two.
You may wonder why you're looking at a site plan review. That's not typically what you are asked to review. There is a particular condition in the institutional overlay. WNL is in an institutional overlay. You just had the fun last year of going through a new campus master plan update. So in an institutional overlay district, if a project is within 200 feet of the boundary of the institutional overlay or within 200 feet of a public road, then the site plan doesn't just stop and gets approved by planning commission. It actually comes to you. That's a specific provision in the institutional overlay. You also have in your packet a traffic study, and I would suggest to you that the traffic study is background information. As you recall from the proffers from the institutional overlay, the update for that campus master plan, there was a request basically from the public, and there were a proffer ultimately from WNL that they would update their traffic impact analysis. That is not really coding. It's not a standard from the city. So if you're not particularly happy how they handle the traffic during construction, as an example, that would not be a valid reason to vote against this particular request. That also leads me to add that this is a ministerial function. So if the proposal meets our standards,
Welcome.
then it should be approved. The discretion is no longer here in the sense that if you're dealing with land use, if you're dealing with conditional use permits, even the design function for either ARB or planning commission in the entrance corridor, those have discretion in them. Now we're to the point in the development process where a site plan is ministerial. If it meets the requirements, then it should be approved. Just to give you an idea of the review time, I believe the first iteration of this site plan came into staff in February, and we went through 3 different reviews. So we would review it, send our comments back to the applicant saying these particular issues don't meet our code. They take their time with their designers. They send us a new set of plans back. We go through them again, and that happened 3 times. So that was over a period of months. And then we finally got to the planning commission, and they did hold a public meeting, and they are making a recommendation for approval. The project in particular is the construction of the Williams School expansion building and its associated utilities, grading, landscaping, signage, and stormwater management on the site of the existing Baker and Davis halls. So those would be removed, and this new expansion building for the Williams School will be put generally in the same footprint. The proposed 39,000 square foot plus or minus facility is just west of West Washington Street. Will provide additional faculty offices and classrooms for the Williams School. An updated traffic study that I just mentioned was also submitted with the site plan application as required by the updated campus master plan for Washington Lee. As an aside, you may have seen construction out there already, or what appears to be construction. That's a little bit of work that's being done prior to the demolition of the buildings. there was a realization at some point that the electrical service, I believe, goes under Davis Hall that feeds Gaines Hall. So you can't really demolish the building and then cut the electrical service to Gaines Hall. So that's being rerouted around the footprint, not just of Davis and Baker, but also ultimately of the footprint of the new building. So once that gets hooked up, so that there's a separate electric or a new route for the electrical service for Gaines Hall, then you will see demolition. They will or are expecting demolition to occur prior to the end of this month before the students come back. There's some other details, just to make you aware that through the campus master plan, there is an additional height approved up to 54 feet specifically for this building. And we have a lot of detail for you. I brought the full set of plans in case you wanted to look at those specific details. But I will say for all the other items that staff has reviewed, and by staff, I mean Public Works, Fire Department, Police Department, Building Official, we will present to you that it meets all the requirements in our zoning ordinance and our other city codes. That includes screening and exterior lighting, landscape buffers, parking, yard setbacks, all those items that are typically reviewed for a site plan approval. And I would direct your attention to the bottom of page 4 of 6 of your staff report, section 420-2.7B. And it gives you a Virginia code section that says that a site plan shall be approved if it is found to be adequate with respect to, and that's 1, 2, 3 on the bottom of that page and all the way up to 8 on the next page. And I will say that it's staff's opinion that the proposed site plan for the Williams School expansion building complies with all zoning requirements pertaining to site design and use and is in compliance with other city codes related to drainage, water supply, fire protection, sanitary sewer facilities, and construction standards. And I believe that's all I have for our presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
I apologize if I missed this, but in regards to the recommendations for the traffic study, have those been implemented or will they?
One of those, if I recall correctly, was already addressed, and that was getting rid of one of the pedestrian crossings, I believe, to the indoor athletic facility. So I'm going to flip all the way over to page 13 of the traffic study. And sorry if we didn't number the overall packet. But there are 4 or 5 items there. One is to install advanced pedestrian crossings with zone ahead supplemental plaques. That has not been done to my knowledge. The second one is refresh all of the crosswalks along West Washington Street. Part of that will be refreshed with this proposal because the area of development, they have to shift or slightly realign the crosswalk that goes across, not the entire crossing table area, but a part of that. So it aligns up better with on the other side of West Washington Street. And number 3, remove existing crosswalk that is no longer applicable. That's been done. Thank you. And number 4 is design the new Williams with multiple access points along West Washington Street to facilitate pedestrian access by reducing concentrations. There are a number of access points. I'm not sure if that has been completely done through the design. And the 5th one is to install edge lines and double center lines, provide traffic calming by reducing the width of the travelway. I don't believe that would be done until the end of the project.
Okay.
This is part of the submittal, so it would be something that we would expect them to accomplish through the construction of this building. Yes.
Thank you.
What does it look like to refresh the crosswalks? Is that, I mean, just repainting them or essentially? Come on up, Hugh.
Latimer, Washington, and Lee, Roanoke, Virginia. Yes, it does. And additionally, refreshing any damaged concrete or brick pavers, anything in that regard. The point is to, once again, achieve that contrast between the road and the crossing for the pedestrians.
Do you anticipate, I know what I'll call the hump is all brick. So you've got a nice, obvious circumstance with others down, further down Washington Street. Do you anticipate doing brick or?
Yes, we do.
stamped
Yes,
concrete?
we do.
Okay.
We found that to have been successful. So we will repeat that.
Terrific. Yeah, because the blue and white striping hasn't held up so well on Route 60. So, but it looked good when it started.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Yeah, members of council have additional questions?
Just
Mr. Alligood.
about the demolition
Yes.
in there. And so when the demolition is finished, you expect it to be finished, it was already stated by the end of August. this month.
Some of it, not all of it, but
But what would be the overall schedule then?
I think probably will be into October before all the remnants of the building is gone. The biggest challenge, as already mentioned first, is to deal with the electrical service so that the students can come back to games with the building electrified. So it was really driven by the utilities. So we're tackling them first. So that's why you don't see a wrecking ball out there at the moment, attacking the buildings.
Had it
That-
not been for the utilities, there would be a wrecking ball.
That's
probably.
true.
All right.
But that will come starting next month.
Which is September. So.
Yes.
So actual building demolition will be September.
Yeah, I think it'll be done before October. Completed before October.
And so when that demolition occurs, is traffic going to be blocked off?
At times. But that'll be regularly scheduled. A lot of our traffic interruption really occurs on that early Fielding Way behind the buildings. That's where most of the construction traffic and activity occurs. So we did not anticipate having to shut down Washington Street for extended periods of time.
Major street for Lexington in there. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to hear that you didn't entertain the idea of giving the current students the experience of the 1800s with limited or no electricity in the dormitory, but
No, it has happened. It has happened.
very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your insights, and I'd like to acknowledge, welcome Mr. Betts. Glad you made it safely on your travels and joined us at 7:26 this evening. So for those keeping up with our balance here. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing for the consideration of request from Washington Lee for the site plan approval that's been presented, we've been discussing. And is there anyone here who would like to speak this evening regarding this item, regarding Washington Lee's site plan approval for the Williams School construction? Hearing none, I would like to close the public hearing at 7:36 and ask for council's consideration.
I move to approve site plan number SP 2023-03 and find the submitted site plan for the Williams School expansion building at 216 West Washington Street to be in compliance with applicable city codes.
Second.
I have a motion and joint second, and ask, is there any discussion from members of council? Hearing none, would ask for a roll call vote. Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much, and good luck with your construction. And as council members Strawn, Smith, and Ziegler return to the dais, grateful for the projects that go on in our community, and this will certainly provide for tonnage at the landfill, as we heard from Fred. Depends on the economy and the projects going on in town. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. You had two pieces in your packet from July 20 work session and July 20 regular meeting. Unless there's any objections, we will approve those as presented. And they are approved. Next item, citizens' remarks and comments. We welcome anyone, and no one has signed up, but is there anyone who would like to address council this evening? Share with us some insights, thoughts, concerns? Seeing none, we will go directly to the consent agenda, and I will ask for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much, and make note of those street closures for Washington and Lee as they accept new students and have other activities going on. Unfinished business, I'll call on the city manager for the Horse Center request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item will come back before city council scheduled for the first meeting of October. So there's really nothing more to report at this point in time. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that on the next item, Arnie Glazer be able to comment on the Architectural Review Board meeting this evening.
Fantastic. And I would suggest or ask, you can take the Horse Center request off the agenda until our October meeting, since we do have a set plan regarding that for future. Arnie.
The ARB, sorry, was requested to review a request for demolition for 201 North Randolph Street. 2 months ago, it was the building official was directed to take a look at the building, and he sent a letter to the property owner basically saying within 60 days, please let me know if you intend to pursue demolition or if you intend to pursue a path towards fixing the building up. The property owner chose the demolition path, and they submitted an application for a historic district certificate of appropriateness. That public hearing was held this afternoon at 5 o'clock. We have at least 3 members here in attendance that were at that meeting. 5 or so people spoke, and the ARB did approve the request for demolition by a vote of 4-1, if I remember correctly.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Arnie?
If someone comes forward in the 11th hour and wants to buy the property, did we start this over again?
If I'm remember correctly, there's no time frame for the ARB decision. So if somebody comes in, hears about the imminent demolition of the property and has the wherewithal to do something about and fix the property up, then yes, someone can still have that ability or time to do that particular item. In other words, yes, the next step would be for the applicant to come in for a demo permit. And we would certainly be interested, because of the interest in the neighborhood for this property, for that to occur sooner than later. But if somebody showed up tomorrow and said, I want to purchase this property, they purchased the property, and I think we would hold off on pursuing, within reason, our request for demolition. We still want somebody, there still has to be progress, is what I'm trying to say. If somebody just comes in and says, I can, and then they don't have an unnumbered number of months to make progress.
You just can't sit on it again.
Correct. That's the nicer way of saying
Oh,
it. The
I'll
quicker
put
way of
words in
saying
your mouth. If somebody purchased it, this is actually a question. If someone purchases the property, the demolition permit is already approved. So if they had the intention of demoing it, they would already have the approval to do so. They wouldn't have to go back to the ARB.
Correct.
It goes with the property. But if they came in and said, we'd like to save the property, they would have to demonstrate a meaningful timeline and process for rehabilitating and securing and rehabilitating the property that would be suitable to the city.
Correct. We would at least expect that a timeline and a process. Now, we may not be asking for financials, because I'm not sure that we could do that.
Right.
But we would certainly hope that if somebody's going to step forward and take on a project the way it looks today, that they would have the wherewithal to actually accomplish it. Right. Because we're not interested to see it continue to be in the state that it's in.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Arnie,
Yeah,
what is the timeline now that it's approved? I mean, is it another 60 days until the first wrecking ball, or what are the neighbors? I guess I should say, to be quite honest, what does this look like for the street and the community and the neighbors?
That's a good question. I don't have the immediate answer. In other words, and I don't have the letter from the building official in front of me. His primary point was within 60 days, choose one of the 2 paths. And I don't believe beyond that, other than saying, if you choose to do construction, then you're going to have to fence it. So there were some minor things in there, but it wasn't the next step. And then within another 30 days or 60 days, you have to apply for and get and be able to obtain a demolition permit. So that wasn't in that initial letter. So it's open-ended, but this expectation is still there that progress is made towards demolition now that demolition has been approved.
But so an expectation exists, and I only just point that out because I feel like there's been an expectation for 7 years since it burnt down in 2016. And so I just would hate for this to drag on, for them to say, oh, it got too late into the fall. We'll, demo it in the spring, and oh, there's no one available. And next thing you know, it's 2025 and here we go again.
We will follow up with them in short order to lay out expectations, because again, the letter from the building official actually obtained what it was intended to do. And now the next step is, how do we make sure that demolition achieves in a reasonable time frame?
Okay.
Is achieved in a reasonable time.
Thank you, sir. Other questions, Mr. Alligood?
Just a clarification question. When it comes to actually obtaining the demolition permit and it is obtained, is there a timer associated with that, a clock associated with that where work needs to be completed? Or if there's not, how long possibly could it stretch out with that permit?
A demolition permit is actually a building permit. And there's a section that you check on the building permit form that doesn't say demolition. It says something else, but it means demolition, raising or something to that effect. So a building permit is valid for 6 months and you have to make progress. So if you don't make progress in 6 months, then your building permit is no longer valid. And since we're using the building permit for demolition, I would say the same process applies. So they have to make progress, otherwise their permit expires for demolition.
So additionally, for clarification purposes, progress is subjective. And in terms of progress, how long making progress could this stretch out?
That'll be up to the building official. It's really his particular process. But it's clear, it's been made clear to the building official that there's an expectation for progress.
Have there been any recent demolitions in Lexington, anytime, in the recent past? I don't know if you can answer.
Have been demolitions.
Didn't Max
Mark with the house over on Walker in Houston is a good example.
And about how long did those processes take?
Max Mark isn't a good example because he probably took longer than what was needed for a house of that size. I'm not aware of anything in the building code that says once you start, you have a certain number of days to finish. I'm not aware of that. So it's, again, progress, it's subjective, but that's why you have professionals that are after it.
So this would fall to the responsibility of our building inspector, and Steve's on the job and has code and guidance to operate by.
Not to complicate matters, but before a demolition permit can be issued, there has to be a clean environmental report. We will not allow demolition of something without a clean environmental. So there will be a period of time where an environmental company will have to go out and take samples. Now, I'm not sure how that happens in this particular case because of the condition of the building. Normally, samples are taken of suspected materials or suspected building materials that may contain asbestos. Those are sent off to a lab somewhere. Results come back in an environmental report that's fairly lengthy with all the sample data, and that comes back to the building official. And if it's clean, then the environmental company then does the abatement, and then finally demolition can occur. So it is possible that the public will see not a whole lot of activity immediately while that remediation process and sampling process occurs.
Very good. Any other questions from council? Arnie, thank you for the update and thank you for the good work of the Planning Commission, or ARB, rather. Next item on the agenda is reports and commissions. Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
I think you heard most of what you needed to hear from Fred, but I wanted to add a little color to it. The track loader that he mentioned that we're getting ready to purchase runs with a price of over $500,000. So it's big, heavy equipment. It doesn't last long. But we needed to do what we gotta do. Our leachate budget item for 24 increased by almost 40% to $120,000. It's something that that's just the way it is. I wish there were another way around it, but leachate's leachate and we got to treat it. And again, I wanted to congratulate Fred and his staff on the successful year that we've had ending 23 with running expenditures and revenues on the good sides of those columns. And despite the increase in leachate expenses. So just wanted to highlight some of the stuff that Fred had to say. Questions?
Not a question, but I'll pile on the leachate. I think it was in 2022 that we ran into a problem where MSA was not able to handle it for a while. We had excessive rains and we had to ship some of it to, I think, Amherst and
We were running, leachate to Amherst, up to Shenandoah, over to Allegheny.
Yeah.
It got
so we're fortunate to have a good partnership with the MSA that they're able to take it under normal circumstances, because shipping water waste from the landfill hundreds of miles is horribly inefficient and expensive. So grateful to the cooperation and partnership with MSA in working to run a much more efficient Blue Ridge Resource Authority.
Well, and that was the bug issue that we were talking about, that I was mentioning earlier. that
Correct.
Caused that
Correct.
relocation of that.
Yes. That and the I think the volumes that we were dealing with, we now have backup plans as to how to deal with if we have excessive amounts and MSA is not able to handle it. So living and learning. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, Main Street Lexington report.
second here. Main Street Lexington and downtown just finished up another successful restaurant week. We have VMI matriculation coming up on the 19th, and Main Street will have a table there. Sidewalk sale will happen September 1st through 3rd. And another welcome W&L first year students will be on Tuesday, September 5th. Another Main Street participation in welcoming incoming students.
Is that the world famous Get Downtown?
Yes, indeed.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions? Hearing none. Ms. Strawn, Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met last Thursday and we continued our discussion of accessory dwelling units. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Keep on talking. And have Tuckler and Chester had their last meeting?
That was their last
Meeting.
meeting. And
Very
so John Eastwood and Mary Stuart Harlow will be at the next meeting,
Fantastic.
participate in the next meeting, I should say.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Publicly thank them. I'm sure you all thank them for their service, and they've been good and faithful members of the Planning Commission, serving our community. Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
Yes, Gene Clark, the Director of Regional Tourism, will be retiring, I believe, at the end of August. Thank you to her for her many years of service to the region. She's done a wonderful job. Getting tourism, keeping tourism strong in this area, including Lexington, Rockbridge, and Buena Vista. That is a role that we will be looking to fill. And that includes my report.
Yes, interesting news with Gene retiring. Chuck.
How is Tourism Board planning to proceed on filling that position?
We will be having a meeting, I believe, tomorrow to discuss further steps in terms of what that's going to look like. There's an agenda for tomorrow. I don't have conclusive answers on for you yet, though.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We, as being the fiscal agent for the Tourism Board, anything we can do to support in your process, know that we staff is available and willing to support to see who's going to lead in the next chapter of the tourism board.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good luck and thank you. Rockbridge Area Recreation Organization.
So our board met on Wednesday at noon at City Hall. We recapped the summertime when I've told you before, we had 12 teams in our co-ed softball league. We had 21 kayakers, and you might recall that I did share that we did not hold the backpacking, the camp, if you will, but our staff does not sit on the sidelines. We're going to launch yet another program. For a long time, some of you might remember the Hershey's track meets, kind of like youth track and field meets. And our plan is to reintroduce that to the community. And so that will occur from mid-September through October. It's going to start out one day a week for a few hours, introducing kids to obviously sprinting, some other events, and then it'll culminate with a track meet. And so that's something that was in this community for a long time. And we thought that we would try to bring it back. Obviously, we have success with river runners. And so there's obviously a great running community in the area. And so again, we thought this was something that was done in the past and we want to bring it back. So we're excited about that. And again, that just is again a testament to our staff that looks around the community. What do we need? What don't we have anymore? And they try to introduce it to the community. We had good news on a couple of fronts. You might recall we bought a new to us pickup truck recently. Our old truck, we literally drove into the ground and had almost, I think, 300,000 miles on it. And so we were due a new truck. The truck that we ultimately bought was a 2020 truck with just under 40,000. It had about 35,000 miles on it. So it's an excellent truck. It's a new to us truck, but we were able to sell our old truck on Gov Deals for just over $4,300. So I think when we purchased the new truck with funds that the localities had allowed us to retain and use for that purpose, we did know that we'd be just a little bit short, given, of course, the price of vehicles and trucks especially. And we were thrilled that an F-150 with 300,000 miles still draws $4,300 on Gov Deals. And of course, you know, the reason we got rid of it was it had some mechanical problems that we, of course, disclosed. We just couldn't keep using it. So we were thrilled with that. We also had great news that we had about 1,807 participants this past year in RARO activities. Now, of course, you know that a participant could be counted twice if they played soccer in the fall and then basketball in the winter and baseball or softball in the spring. That person would count 3 times because they, but 1,807 participants is a record for us. And of course, our goal is to continue to eclipse that. So we're excited about that. Looking to this fall, we had to go out and purchase about 35 more football helmets. That was not an easy task for our staff because right now we've got 199 young people signed up for football, and last year we had 161. Wow. So football has increased dramatically. Soccer is very close to where it was last year, just a hair under. And then cheerleading went from 93 last year to 141. The growth is amazing. And so I think we owe everything to our coaches, obviously, because we want our kids to have good experiences. And we've got so many good coaches and volunteers, and we always can't say thank you enough to all of the coaches. So I'm thrilled to report on that. We also had a quick and brief presentation at our meeting. We had Stacy Stevens, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and also Tracy Lyons, the executive director from the Chamber, come and kind of give an overview to our board about the results from the READY grant that we're all familiar with. But Chad Coffey, our executive director, has participated in some of those sessions, strategy sessions, and so on. And so really, Stacy and Tracy came to us, to our whole board, and just kind of talked about where that grant stands and if, you know, where RARO might fit into what they would like to do in the future. And so that was a really good presentation, and always the Chamber, we want to try to support their efforts. So in total, we accomplished a lot in our 55-minute lunch meeting. It was not one of our marathon 2-hour plus RARO Board of Director meetings. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And also, we have another board member here. Leslie Ayers is a board member on RARO, and I could defer to Leslie to make her answer any hard questions.
Terrific.
What ages do the various sports that you spoke about start at?
So quite honestly, we start with flag football would be what, 7 and 8 year olds. We won't start tackle football, so that would be flag football. And then soccer, we would start intro soccer is again about 6 to 7 years old. The Y you might see in the community does have soccer for almost 4 and 5 year olds. That's not something where we've gone there yet, and that the Y came in and helped offer that. And then cheerleading, I feel like cheerleading is as 5 years old. And so, of course, all of the skills are tailored to the age of the kids that we have. And of course, those younger, the intro, I mean, that is skill development, definitely. And so, and of course, at the younger age, it's co-ed and so on. And of course, we just rely on those coaches to make sure that the kids have that great experience at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, then they stick with it. The Hershey's track meets that we plan to try to get up, or the track and field, we see that as being in the fall for ages 13 to 18, to be quite honest, initially. That's what we're seeing a little bit, where we feel like we could be successful before we see if it's, able to grow.
Thank you.
And the ages for pickleball, I can't divulge because
Children of all ages. Thank you for that report. I should say thank you for that enthusiastic report and positive things going on with RARO, and a great example, like tourism, a great example of when the communities all work together, making our community a better one. Threshold, Miss Alexander.
I will defer to Mr. Beck.
Sure. At our last threshold meeting, we discussed the windshield survey, and there was everybody seemed to agree that that was a good way to proceed. We will be holding a public meeting at our next threshold meeting. I believe it's the last Wednesday, the 23rd of August. And it's going to be an hour later to give the public more time to attend, 5 p.m. Rather than our normal 4 p.m. And we additionally talked about past programming, which Threshold has done in the past, including forgivable loan program and some other programs that have happened in the past, just to kind of talk about our history and get some ideas for what we might do down the road, or some potential ideas once we get back the data from the windshield survey.
Very good.
And is that on the second floor of City Hall?
Second floor, yes.
So the 23rd at 7, 5, 23rd at 5.
We usually meet
City
at
Hall.
4, but this time it'll be at 5 to give the public a chance to come if they're working.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it doesn't matter what time you hold the meeting. If it's of major concern to many people, they will make the time to be there. But thank you all for organizing at 5 o'clock so folks can slip out of work and attend and get a better understanding of what Threshold's working on. Memorial Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After the upset last month at the MSA water plant, things have gone back to kind of normal operations again. One of the things that I have been advocating since I've been on the board there is having backup pumps on the shelf ready for replacement, rather than always having a crisis to have to get one repaired and whatever timetable that means. And that has been paying off. We've had raw water pump replacement. Now, of course, the one that needed replacement is out for repair, but there was one on the shelf that could be swapped out. So that was relatively seamless. The same happened at the wastewater treatment plant as well. Additionally, at the wastewater treatment plant, ordered over a year ago, was electrical equipment The equipment I learned was manufactured in Brazil. And, it's American company, but manufactured in Brazil, and there was extensive time, and this is back during the pandemic when stuff was ordered, but it's been delivered finally. And so it's in the process of undergoing installation. Additionally, the emergency backup generator, which has been problematic, is getting repaired, the switch gear. And to do that work requires moving in truck mounted large generators, because you have to disconnect from the main power source coming in. So you have to have your backup power truck mounted trailers. So that's going to be a big operation to do that, but that's scheduled to be happening soon, this month in there to do that. And the ultraviolet water purification controller, which was a big deal to order, is in the process of undergoing installation as well, which means you don't have to run it on or off. It was always on, and now it'll be controlled and much better operation in terms of purifying water that goes through it in there. And that is pretty much what's happening operationally. The engineering reports on that matter have gotten closer. I had anticipated at our last meeting that we would have a public report during this month. I was wrong. It's now going to be projection next month. It keeps getting pushed back. Things are happening. Questions are having to be investigated, but we haven't forgotten it. And hopefully next month we'll have the public report. But things are moving, even though it seems like it's a snail's pace. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Any questions for Mr. Alligood? Mr. Smith?
Where are they going to keep the truck mounted generators for backup? Is that up at the actual wastewater facility?
Yes, at the wastewater plant, very near to where the existing generator is. The wiring is all there to connect into that. And it's a big deal to connect these large horsepower generators into the system. And that'll be 100% of the power needs for the plant. So prior to doing that, there had to be an analysis of just what size generators you really did need to come into the plant. You just don't order them and say, this is going to work. There had to be an analysis. And of course, nothing happens overnight, but that was done. And so the decision on what size generators to order to come in was made, and it's lined up to do the work this month.
Thank you.
No further questions. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report, and in no particular order, wanted to share a few things with you. First and foremost, if you don't have it on your calendar, it's not too late. You too can attend the Chamber of Commerce meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. It's scheduled 8 to 10 at the Virginia Horse Center. Nicole Riley with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership will be speaking and bringing us wit and wisdom from the capital city. Last night, if you missed it, it was a gorgeous evening, and cheers to the chamber, a fundraiser for their scholarship efforts for the chamber and their annual scholarship for high school students. And it was a beautiful evening at Great Valley Farm Brewery. Wanted to recognize good work of Arnie and his department. 120 South Jefferson Street is a home that's not currently occupied, and the contractor who was supposed to be mowing the grass and tending to it, I don't think had been tending to it. The city, because of a complaint, reached out to the owner to let them know that it hadn't been attended to, and the owner at her cost has cleaned up that property and made it so you can actually see down the street safely when you're turning off of Preston onto Jefferson. So thank you to staff. One of those tough things to do, and reaching out and tracking down people and helping them take care and being good neighbors. The Friday night, we all experienced the derecho-like windstorm. The JCs got put out of business at Fridays Alive, but we're grateful for their work and efforts. It became a little unsafe, so they abandoned their tents as tables were flying through the parking lot. The great work that Public Works did and Dominion was personally in contact with Dee Dee Henney, who was overseeing some of the groups replacing the light poles and cleaning debris and restoring the power. And very grateful to all of them for the quick, professional, and timely work from that devastation. The Randolph Street United Methodist Church, as I'm sure you're aware, their roof peeled off almost like the opening of a tin can, damaged a couple of automobiles that were at H&J. But Holland's General Contractors was secured by the church to deal with that claim. And they sought out Mike Orse and his team, who, if you didn't see, it was entertaining is not the right word, but entertaining and exhilarating to watch him with his bucket trucks and scaling the roof as they secured a tarp to help protect the church. And helping protect them for several hours was Building Inspector Steve Polk. And so a special thank you to him and all of those folks for working so quickly and efficiently to secure the property, to minimize the property damage that already occurred. And with that, one of the things that I'd make an appeal to our community is to take a good look at your property and trees that are in your home. Some of the trees that did the worst damage on Main Street and Jackson were ultimately dead and blew over in the storm. And it impacted everyone with the loss of power and the damage. And sometimes these big, beautiful trees, if they've reached their life expectancy and are in decline significantly, it's better to take it down. And so I appeal to neighbors to take a look at that, take a look at bushes, keeping it off the street so that safety for everyone is paramount. And lastly, I think I wanted to alert you all that I received an email today from Betty Beazle, who was resigning effective immediately because of personal reasons from the tree board. Of course, she served the city very capably and professionally as an arborist for a number of years. And when she stepped away from that role, stepped onto our tree board and has been serving, I can't remember exactly how long, but for quite some time. So wanted to personally recognize Betty Beazle. She's been a great friend through the years, very capable arborist and tree board member and advocate for trees and beautification in our community. So thank you to Betty. And check my scribble. That's all I have for my report. Welcome any questions. And hearing none, we'll pass it off to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on your comments, I'd like to give a shout out to our Public Works, Police and Fire Department, and our building inspector for their work into the night, Friday night, into the wee hours, and then most of the day Saturday, dealing with the impacts of the storm. And they do a great job. I'm really proud of their professionalism and the work they do for this community. Because of our capital improvements projects planning and financing work, Jennifer Bell, the finance director, and I have sat down with Davenport and Associates, who are our financial advisors, and we are beginning to put together a plan for the financing of our capital needs for 10+ years. And with that, we have scheduled a meeting. I did send out a notice to all of you, or a request for a date, on August 21st, Monday, at 6 p.m. in the police department to go over the draft plan of how we can look at financing our capital needs and hopefully do it in a sustainable way that doesn't put too much burden on our taxpayers today, or those taxpayers 20 years from now who enjoy the fruits of the work we will do and continue to do over the years ahead. So, I've tried to notify you of that date, but do please put it on your calendar. I hope you can all make it. And again, police department's training room update from the police department is that Chief Green was recommended to serve on the Virginia Maternal Mortality Board representing law enforcement, and she was appointed to that position by the governor. And that board investigates the deaths of mothers who may die within a year of childbirth, just to watch over the health and safety of mothers and children during that that period of life when there's a lot of things that can happen, go wrong, if you will. Several members of the department toured the Miller's House Museum this last week to become familiar with the displays and layout of the museum, since we have a duty to protect our property there and the security of that museum. The police department and their department cadets manned the community trailer and table during the Celebrate Rockbridge event in Brubaker Park recently. The department provided the Alzheimer's support bike ride with an escort when they came through the city. Members of the department also recently participated in the National Night Out, and Corporal Stockdale is continuing his training for instructor certification at the Cardinal Academy. In the fire department, they had their recent advanced aerial operations training for the new tower truck. It was a 3-day training, and all the department personnel were able to participate in that training, going over the various operations that truck can perform when it's fighting a fire or taking care of other emergency operations in the community. The department performed a number of community safety and training exercises, such as providing CPR training, first aid training, installing child safety seats, etc. Some of the things we don't see that are a little more mundane and less visible than fighting fires and responding to storms. The department also participated in the National Night Out. They also had their equipment recently tested. Their self-contained breathing apparatus is pressurized airflows, pressurized containers that provides airflow when they're fighting a fire, and that has to be tested annually, and they just completed that testing. The department, working collaboratively with the Rockbridge Fire and Rescue, had a medical equipment demo opportunity at the fire department. They hosted it, and they also had a Fire Instructor 1 class that was taught by Rockbridge Fire and Rescue, hosted in the department. And of course, that shows the high level of collaboration we have in our region with all the fire departments in our community. During the storm, the fire department responded to 15 calls directly after the storm, 12 of those being in the city. Updates from DPW. I think most of us probably have seen or been aware of people who are experiencing the relining work up on Providence Hill, and that work is going very well. As any type of a project of that nature, we did have a few calls early on about streets being shut down and some of the inconvenience that people experienced, but there was really no widespread complaints or concerns, which was a very positive thing. And to date, we've had 3,717 feet of 6-inch line lined with PVC piping and 717 feet of 12-inch line that also have been relined. Further work will be ongoing. We're doing the camera work, or the contractors are doing the camera work now to inspect those other lines to see what type of point repairs are going to be needed, where maybe the pipes have collapsed or there's root intrusion, and also to look at the manhole repairs that have to be done before they then begin lining those pipes as a second phase of this work. Very good news. I don't have wood right in front of me, but good news to report on the East Denny water main replacement project, going very, very well. Washington University and their staff have been very, very helpful working with us to make sure we could, the contractor that is, can work very efficiently to get that water line replaced. And we do believe we're going to make it before they open classes, which was a goal that was originally hoped for, but we'd gotten the cooperation from W&L that if we had to work, or the contractor had to work through September, they understood. But at this juncture, it looks like they'll be pretty much cleaned up by the start of class. There might be some very minimal repair work, grading, seating, that type of stuff that still has to be done, but the line itself should be underground, the street should be repaired, and won't be too much of an interference with classes. Public Works is also working with VMI in front of the Aquatic Center now this week, and maybe ongoing, to just look at some repair work that needs to be done there. And congratulations to Jerome Rose in Public Works, who is now a licensed waterworks operator. Little update on the DSS building. The committee, regional committee that has been working on that project met yesterday, I believe it was. Is that right, Ms. Ayers? Okay, very good. See, we have the same memory. Not mine isn't good anyway, but To look at what the next steps are. We haven't gotten the type of response we'd hoped from the Department of General Services so that we could work at this point in time in locating the Office of Drinking Water and Health Department in that building, begin the architectural drawings and engineering drawings. So in order to move forward, because DSS has to be out of the Woody building in April 9th, that's 2025. We're going ahead and doing the building engineering and design now for social services alone. If we can follow up later with the health department and with Department of Office and Drinking Water, also the Rockbridge Area Health Center, we will do so. We will plan the site so that there can be multiple buildings on the site, using that site effectively, whether it's for these agencies or others in the future. So infrastructure will be looked at when we make these plans, and we would need to proceed now in order to meet that deadline of April of 2025, relocate the health Department of Social Services. We recently had a report from the owner of Earth Magic and Univista about their recycling efforts. Mr. Alligood mentioned them earlier as well, and they continue to be a success. And as evidence of that success, they've now recycled 32,057 pounds of glass. Of that, 14,393 pounds came from Lexington, which is about 45% of all the glass that's being recycled. So congratulations to our citizens and Earth Magic. Few updates from planning and inspection, and the operations and planning inspections generally continue to be trending up. Administrative activities, which are permits, certificates of occupancy, etc., are up 17% year over year. Development activities are up 14%. Permit fees are up 222%, and value of improvements are up 85%. So we've done very well this year, especially in an economy and environment where it's very hard for contractors now to move ahead with projects because of price increases, financing, etc. And frankly, I would expect to see that work fall off later because of those very issues. You know, financing is not easy to come by. It's still hard to expensive for construction these days. Update from the Rockbridge project, the innovation project, that is. The city school board met earlier this week and discussed that project. As you may recall, the city share of that project is $2,133,009, not including possible contingency costs. And we will finance our portion of that project through the county's financing that they're undergoing. The total cost of the project is $14,789,196. And of that $1,149,123 that we will owe, that we owe, the state will have that much money provided to the schools. $1,149,123 was a state grant. The schools also have $548,864 in reserve for high school improvements. So when you put those two figures together, there'd be $435,022 that we'd have to finance through the general fund. The school board did give the superintendent the authority to work with us to use that $435,000 to pay for that debt service as most appropriate. Or likely what we'll do is just go ahead and start paying the monthly or annual debt service with that money until it runs out. And then we'll have to finance that other $435,000 with general fund expenditures down the road. And that's the end of my report. If there's any questions.
Mr. Alligood.
Just to remind me again, I wasn't completely listening, the Davenport meeting, date and time.
Monday, the
August
21st
21st
of August, yes.
6 p.m.
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yeah.
It was originally proposed at 7, but in conjunction with discussion with Davenport, 6 o'clock was a preferred time.
At the police department.
Correct.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
I had a question about Randolph Street project, since Arnie and Jim and Jeremy is with us. What consequences, if it gets to the point where legal needs to get involved with, let's say the owner just says, I'm just walking away from it. I mean, what penalties, civil, criminal, what process do we go through if we get to that point?
I'll turn it over to our attorney, but of course we begin typical enforcement activities And at some point in time, if we didn't get the response we needed, as you
Right.
say, it would take a legal avenue, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Carroll.
And I would have to go look at the code to give you a specific precise answer, but what we would begin with is fines and then you ratchet it up and eventually you seek particularly if it falls into, and I haven't gone to look at it. Because I know there's another building that Jim and I have been talking about that is unsafe. If this one is an unsafe structure, eventually there's a mechanism for the city to demolish the building and place a lien on the property. And so that I don't think that's where you want to go immediately. I think there are steps to get there, but that is ultimately one possible outcome.
Yeah, as David pointed out, we've been around this lap.
Yeah.
A number of times and
Yeah, they
I-
are still in violation. Just because they came up with a proposal and have now gone to the ARB does not cure the fact that they are in violation.
Right.
So I don't think we have to start over the process. We just begin to ratchet up and take enforcement measures if they don't continue to move forward in a pace that satisfies us.
I have a follow-up question on that. If somebody else did purchase it, would they immediately be in violation or would they have?
I think they would be. I think we have established a violation. We would certainly put them on notice of the violation and expect them to then pick up and take over the remedial steps that have been approved. They would have a window of time. Again, I can't give you a specific date, much like Arnie couldn't, but they would have a window of time to go forward with the demolition. And if they failed to do so, then we would take other enforcement action. And that's where I'll have to get back to you on the specifics. And I know that gets into my report a little bit. I know Arnie's office and some folks in my office have talked recently about some enforcement steps, not necessarily for 201 North Randolph, but they've just had some consultation. So that's an option that certainly we can offer to Arnie, is to help his office more as it becomes necessary. Obviously, it's not, legal action is not anyone's preferred route.
Right.
We'd rather have cooperation, but
Absolutely. Yep.
it's an option if we need to go there.
Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for the city manager? Hearing none, we call on city attorney.
And I was going to mention some of the communications that have been going on in the last couple of weeks with Arnie's office. So I think I've got some attorneys who do some enforcement work for me, and they're going to work with Arnie as we go forward and try to provide some service where it's needed. And again, it hasn't necessarily just come up in the context of 201 North Randolph. It's come up with other properties as well. Also, since the last meeting, we have Jim and I worked together, and I know Jim talked to Ms. Ayers, and we've identified and cured a couple issues with the pool lease. And so that's now ready to be your next item on your agenda. We've amended the lease slightly and the ordinance that had been presented last time to account for some insurability issues and make sure that it's the city that will be insuring the pool. And Jim and I have worked together. I know the lodging tax is something that won't come up for another couple of months, but we have revised some language so that code section modification is ready to go if the Lynn City Council is ready to move forward. Beyond that, happy to answer any questions. There are, of course, other things I'm working on, but some of those I don't want to talk about out here. So
Fair enough. Any questions for the city attorney? Hearing none, thank you again, and we will move to new business, item 15.1, consideration of a lease of the Rockbridge Aquatic Center by the Friends of Rockbridge Swimming for swimming. City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Carroll did go into some of the detail. You saw this at your last meeting as well. We're here to recommend approval of both the lease and the ordinance which will allow the Friends of Rockbridge Swimming to operate the indoor pool as they have in the past. They've done a very good job. We're very happy with the operations of the pool by Friends of Rockbridge Swimming. And so as the city attorney said, the ordinance is in order, the agreement's in order. The Friends of Rockbridge Swimming have evaluated both documents, and we're all ready to move forward and would recommend council do so this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Will you just explain briefly what the insurance issue was? Because previously, I think they reimbursed the city for insurance that was purchased.
and I'm not that, I don't know the answer to that. Let's let you. So. The insurability issue that I referenced was there was some confusion when the initial draft was put together. I'll take responsibility for the confusion. I was under the impression that Friends of Rockford Swimming had built and owned the pool and had a ground lease on the property. And so it was first drafted as a ground lease in which they owned the pool and they insured the pool. They don't own the pool. The city owns the pool. They don't have an insurable interest in the pool, so we are going to insure the pool. As far as the flow of money, I don't know the answer to that.
The original lease in 2018. We ran into the same thing. The former city manager wanted us to take ownership of the building, but last minute we couldn't because we don't technically own a building that sits on the property. So they came up with a formula. I think Gary came up with an estimate of how much your umbrella policy would count, and that was assessed the first year. And I believe we paid it several years, and then we asked, what do we do now? And it was never, and we're fully happy to pay you. We don't, if you tell us what percentage that is, we will happily take care of that. And have always been willing to do that, just to be clear. But I do think, and that's the property insurance. We of course have liability insurance, compensation board insurance. We have lots of other insurance.
I'd have to look, but I don't believe that was in the document for the lease that we found, though, was it? The
It
payment?
was in the previous.
It was in the
lease.
previous,
It is
okay.
previous, and it was something we had previously discussed.
It's not a deal breaker.
Right,
I'm just
right.
pointing it out.
Right.
Exactly.
Whatever you want to do.
This one.
It is something that needs to be calculated. And of course, we probably put another in the last year or two, $300,000 into the facility. So that needs to be, we spent $40,000 on a beautiful generator. And the next day we lost power. It was a beautiful thing to have that. But I just want to let you know, we take very good care of the asset, the community asset. And we have a 20-year plan, and we revised that, and we are constantly updating the facility that you all have very graciously let us use. And I just also want, we 17 years, and a lot of children have learned how to swim there. A lot of your children, a lot of the counties and Buenavista's children, and one of them is going off to Duke this year, and that is an exciting thing. And they have to have a place to start. And I just want to thank you very much for not only Ally's success, but all of our kids' success in their water safety.
Thank you, Leslie. If it pleases council, we'll perhaps leave the document as is, because the insurance piece is bundled with all the rest of the city's insurance. Instead of carving that out and doing calculation is easy enough to do, but time consuming, and time being money. The partnership that we have with For Swimming in overseeing our outdoor pool and providing the service to the community of our indoor pool is terrific. And I think we can march merrily in partnership into the future. So
I just pointed it out since Jeremy referenced insurance, and I remembered that from 2018, it
Right.
did explicitly say an amount that would be conveyed annually to cover the insurance, and just wanted to tie that loose end up.
perfect. Any further recommendation of the city manager? And I'd welcome council's consideration.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-08, an ordinance approving and authorizing the mayor and or city manager to execute the lease with Friends of Rockbridge Swimming Incorporated.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote. Ms. Strong,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. And Leslie, congratulations on the water safety instruction that your group and For Swimming has provided in the exercise, and sharing your excitement for Ally's success at the Olympic trials, and the great things I know that she'll do at Duke, and will help remind her where she came from. So very, very, very proud of her accomplishments. There are no other items to come before council, but we do have the closed session, as I mentioned. And for those who may not have been here at the beginning, it is for discussion of personnel and matters requiring legal advice. And with that, again, we do not anticipate taking any action other than adjourning our meeting after the closed session. Ms. Alexander, if you'll read us in.
I move that Lexington City Council convene in closed meeting in accordance with section 2.2-3711 subsection A paragraph 1 of the Code of Virginia, closed session for the purpose of discussing the performance of the city manager, and 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel on matters requiring legal advice.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Betts,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
and I vote aye. We can now go into a closed meeting.